rules this world, and he's the father of lies. And so we kind of grow up with a sort of wisdom, a sort of methodology and philosophy of life and practice, which is based on things that aren't true, or certainly aren't from heaven. They're not in accord with God and the way God likes to do things. They're in accord with the way the world works. That's kind of how we're raised. And we've learned that we need to apply worldly principles here in the world to be successful. And that makes sense, right? I mean, suppose you attend a class, a math class, and the professor says to you that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Well, you may think otherwise. You may think that 2 plus 2 equals 4. You may even have a good idea that 2 plus 2 equals 4. But if that teacher is the one who's giving the grades, and that teacher can tell you whether or not you pass or not, and whether or not you're going to be able to get a degree or not, and move on and be successful or not, what are you going to do in that class? You're going to act as though 2 plus 2 equals 5, because she's got all the power, or he's got all the power in that class. It's that way here in the world. It doesn't matter what you may think or believe. If you want to be successful here in the world, you've got to play by the world's rules. And the world's rules are not God's. And so what happens is God opens our eyes, right? We become believers, and the Bible says that the Holy Spirit begins to teach and to train us, and we begin to read the Word, and we begin to find that God has renewed our minds. He's transformed our hearts, and now we see things the way they really are. He's given us real wisdom. Well, like any good teacher, they follow the lecture with an exam or a test. And when God has given us all this wisdom, all this new understanding, He wants to test you to see if you have it or not. That seems fair, right? Well, the way He's going to test you, the way He tests us with this new knowledge, this new wisdom, is He provides you a scenario or a circumstance in your life where your old form of wisdom seems to be a good idea, and He's going to argue with you and see whether or not you take the heavenly way, or the earthly way. And that's what's going on here. What in the world could possibly be wrong with taking a census, right? What's wrong with that? The world takes censuses. Our country even now is in the process of taking a census. David's the king. He's engaged in warfare and battles, right? Doesn't it seem as though he should know how many soldiers he has, right? What kind of standing army he has? How many people? How powerful the country is, that sort of thing. Why is it a bad idea? Well, let's look at Joab's response to it for just a second, because Joab kind of stands in the place of God here. David is doing this thing because it seems like it's a wise, important, good thing to do. There's lots of precedents in the world for doing it. But Joab is going to argue with him. What are his arguments? Look at the first one. In verse 3, he says, "May the Lord add to His people 100 times as many as they are." Here's what I love about this passage. What Joab is saying right away is he's saying, God will, if you count these people, David, I don't care how many people they are, if I go out here and count all these people, I want you to understand that that's all we're ever going to have. Because as soon as you count them, they're yours. And he's saying, don't you understand that God has already taken a census? In fact, He not only knows how many people you have, but He knows how many hairs are on their heads. And if it's God who's really running this country, and you're just working for Him, what do you care? How many people are out there? He said, if you go out there and count, that's it for you. You've got your reward. That's your army for the rest of your life. But he says, I pray that God would, whatever the number is, that He can increase it by 100 times. That's his first argument. The second one, which was an argument that a worldly king wouldn't agree with, but look at his next argument. He says, "But my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants?" The next argument he makes is that he says, the people are behind you right now, David, because you seem to be trusting in the Lord. And for them to remain behind you, you need to continue to show that you're not trying to maintain or keep this country or expand it by might or by power. Look at his third argument. He says, "Why does my Lord seek this thing?" I kind of like that. Why are you doing this, David? He says, David, I didn't know you when you were a boy, but I've heard tales of what you told to Goliath when you were just a boy and you slayed that giant. Remember what you told him, King? Remember you said, it's not by might nor by power, but by thy Spirit, saith the Lord. Do you remember that? This looks like you're changing your tune, but it is by might, it is by power. Don't do this thing. This can only bring guilt on us. Don't ruin the blessing that God's blessing us with by incurring a curse, by doing this thing on your own. If God be for us, who can be against us, is what he's arguing. And he's saying, this is a bad decision. One of the most tragic words in this whole story is the word in verse 4, nevertheless. I don't know what problem you have in your life today. I know some of your problems. I know some of the things you're battling with. Whatever it is, I'm sure that your old way of thinking is making an argument for how you should proceed. And you've got some plan that seems to make sense to all of your friends, which seems to make sense to yourself, which could accomplish the goal. I just pray that as God reasons with you, whether he reasons with you in personal time of devotion or in a church setting like this, or in a book that you're reading, or in your own reading of the Word, I pray that when he reasons with you and he tests your mind, that it won't end up in a nevertheless. Because what happens is, David listens to this argument and he says, I'm not worried about incurring the wrath of God. I'm not interested in what I used to believe or how I used to run this country. We're doing things differently now. I'm taking a census. That's sad. If you want to look in the Bible at all of the biggest problems back then and even to today, it's always when man says, enough with God's plan, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to accomplish God's plan my way. And Israel was God's people, and David decided to run it his way, and it ended up being disastrous. So whatever problem in your life, remember, you're God's now. You belong to him. You need to do things his way. Well, the final point I want to make the final test that he gives is to our soul, and he does that by striking us. God strikes us to test our souls. Look at verse 7. It says, and God was displeased with this thing, so he struck Israel. The